I've mentioned before how I tend to find the tone of fantasy games falls into one of three camps: cozy, dark, and bright. And my usual preference is bright fantasy with its colourful characters, hopeful atmosphere, and high drama. Well, here's a game that challenges my model of fantasy tone. Midnight Muscadines, the cozy dark game of magical jams, the game I probably spent the most time with in 2025. It's a narrative-first, open-ended game for solo or group play with some really interesting tools for generating stories at the table. I'm genuinely going to have to restrain myself from talking for hours about this game. So let's just jump in and have a look at what a cozy dark game looks like, and what even is a Midnight Muscadine. The book is really nicely laid out, with a consistent colour scheme that carries on into Galen Peugeot's artwork, making it feel cohesive throughout. The colours are deep and moody, but also rich and warm. Cozy, but dark. It runs through a very brief intro before diving into character creation and rules. The midsection gives loads of tools for playing and generating stories, ingredients and adversaries, oracles and hex maps, 3 pre-written adventures and 5 one-shot mysteries. And finally, there's a setting guide filled with these little cultural vignettes about the world for inspiration, as well as locations, each with their own events and NPCs. A small criticism that people have had about this back section is that the font size is a little small for comfortable reading. I asked someone who wears reading glasses to take a look, and they didn't have a problem, but you might want to keep the PDF as a backup if you do struggle with smaller fonts. I also have this card deck for drawing on the tables and such. You don't need this one specifically, you can use a regular playing card deck, looking up the entries in the book, but the deck makes it much faster and might even be super useful as a GM emulator tool for other games. And lastly, there's this character journal and some stickers to go with it. I haven't used the journal yet. I'm always a bit reluctant to start scribbling on nice books like this, but I really appreciate some of the extras in here, like the NPC character cards and hex map. The world of song is a dying world, literally fraying at the edges. The sun has gone, shattered by the vengeful god Valgus, in retribution for the deicide of his sister Tomb. The land has warped, its ecosystem forever changed, the servants of Tomb corrupted into monstrous shadows. And yet, life goes on. After an apocalyptic battle, the people of Nim seized 5 shards of the sun and imprisoned Valgus. The light from those shards lets them live a relatively comfortable life, celebrating festivals, studying at universities, and visiting tea shops, free from the threats of darkness and the shadows of Tomb. For now. Because magic is waning, and the world is still dying. Eventually, the sun shards will fade. And even beyond the twilight borders of Nim, life goes on in the fragmented settlements of the Wildernite, lit by bioluminescent flora, fallen stars, or even stranger technology. And in the dark wilds between those settlements is where you might find the Midnight Muscadines, magical grapes that can be harvested, crystallized and turned into jars to mix ingredients into magical jams, and then stored, literally preserving the magic of the world. It's cozy and dark. In the towns of Nim, there are all these festivals and events you can come across, or restaurants and libraries you can visit. And yet, on the borders, the shadows of Tomb wait for the inevitable fading of the sun shards. You can tame and train whimsical magical creatures, mix your own spells in jams, but in the background, secretive factions wage war for control of the jam stockpiles, and Wilderfolk saboteurs attempt to resurrect Tomb, the goddess of night, or free the chained god Valgus. Cozy, yet dark. The game assumes you'll be playing as a Marmoteer, one of the people tasked with finding and harvesting the Midnight Muscadines. But there's quite a bit more to it than that, and it's actually very open-ended. First, you pick a folk from the various weird and unique peoples of song. There's the Nimians, who are descended from the people who captured the Sun Shards and imprisoned Valgus. There's Wilderfolk, the people who are closer to Tomb and stayed in the Dark Wildernite after she was killed and the sun shattered. The almost Yoda-like Bogsgart from the swamps of the Wildernite. The Luminite who emerged from the shattered sun, born from its dying heart. The Woadlings, sent out from their grove when they come of age. And my favourite, the Tattlings, relatives of the thick-furred patchfolk who stayed in the Wildernite. And now they're wanderers, cloaked in rags with button eyes. It's difficult to tell where their bodies end and their clothes begin, and through their connection to threads, they have an affinity for the broken things of the world, whether it's an object, a relationship, or the world itself. Cozy, with a hint of darkness. Picking a folk gives you 3 culturally thematic abilities before we move on to background, what you were good at before being recruited into the Marmoteers. These are a bit more abstract, where each background is a catch-all for various kinds of vocations, like a soul weaver might have been a healer, a priest, or an apothecary. You can create your own if you don't find something you like, but either way it gives 2 more abilities and some starting stats. And then there's your guild, and like I said, by default you're a member of the Marmoteers Guild, which gives you a jam jar and the ability to craft magical jams, but you also get to pick a second guild and associated ability. The guilds are the big factions of Nim, each with their own goals and secrets. Take the Sage Leaf for example, the tea makers of Nim, who know that all good days begin and end with tea. They have a goal of establishing tea houses as safe resting places across the Wildernite, and helping elderly tea house owners pass on their knowledge and train their successors. Cozy, right? But they also want to establish a monopoly on trade routes and cultivate forgotten and illegal conscious-altering hallucinogenics that might reveal hidden truths about the world, which puts a much darker note onto their other operations. So now you have 6 abilities, you need to assign scores to your 4 attributes. We're using a step die system here, so you actually assign and tweak die sizes to strength, dexterity, willpower, and heart. And then crafting your first jam. Later you'll forage for ingredients and combine them into weird and wonderful spells, but for now you draw a card and check the list of ingredients for a starter spell. Spells have associated die sizes as well as attributes, and your starter spell begins at D6. I'll get to how that works in practice briefly, but to finish your Marmoteer, you just need a piece of equipment, and that also has an associated die size. And finally, a quirk and a style that you can roleplay to generate rewards. There's quite a lot going on under the bonnet here, so let's start with the basic resolution system. Whenever you make a check, you roll at least 2 dice against a difficulty rating. One is the die from whichever attribute you're using, and the other is the impact die. The impact die comes from whatever spell, item, or role-playing feat you're using, and if what you're doing is particularly effective, you step up the impact die size and vice versa. So, for an example, let's say you're trying to attract someone's attention with a simple d6 light spell. Under normal circumstances, your impact die is a d6 for this spell. If you're doing this in the darkness of the Wildernite though, then that light spell is going to be more effective, and you probably step up the impact die to a d8. And conversely, if you're standing right next to the full brightness of a sun shard, then maybe you'd step it down to a d4. So it's quite a flexible and narrative system that encourages you to be creative with your spells and gear and role-playing. It might seem a little complex at first, but to be honest, when I'm playing, the actual mechanics of what my impact die size is and where it comes from kind of fade into the background compared to the story. Is this an awesome plan? Then the impact die is higher. Am I on the back foot? Then it's probably lower. So once you roll, you'll either get a success or a setback. A success grants you an XP, and a setback grants you a card for your hand. Cards can be spent in various ways: to add extra impacts dice to a roll, to activate certain abilities, or to add new ingredients to your jam. And as well as from setbacks, you can gain cards by role-playing your quirk and style, or by spending some XP. I really like the incentive structure here. If you want a guaranteed success, you're going to have to go through some setbacks first to build up your hand. And a setback isn't a straight failure, it adds a narrative spanner in the works and rewards you with a card. And what it leads to is this feeling of balance in the gameplay loop, a back and forth between cards and XP, between setback and success, between cozy and dark. There's lots of tools in the book for playing this game without a GM. If you're familiar with solo and GM-less games, you probably get the idea of oracles, tables, and generators, and there's quite a lot of that sort of thing available whenever you need an ingredient, an answer to a question, a location, or a rumour. There's also a handy way of structuring quests and storylines here. One of the most unique tools that I want to highlight is the mentor prompt system that takes centre stage here. It's like an open question oracle, but instead of random phrases, the prompts focus on story beats you can string together to form a plot. Whenever you're unsure of what to do next, you just draw a card, look up its mentor prompt, and follow what it says. The text guides you through a story beat like add a twist, or introduce a rival, or uncover a mystery. I love this focus on the structure and craft of storytelling. You're not solely relying on randomness, but building a narrative with these blocks. It's great for either GMing or emulating a GM to be able to ask, what next? And have the cards answer in a clear and helpful way. And something I haven't tried, but I think is a really cool idea, is that when playing as a group, each player draws a mentor prompt at the beginning of the game, and then can play it at an appropriate point in the session, guiding the narrative for a moment. It's quite a collaborative option. Having said that, there are some minor downsides I've encountered with this way of doing things. I sometimes find that the mentor prompts don't always drive the plot forward. Some, like zoom in or yield to a viewpoint, are great for setting tone and atmosphere, but don't necessarily take you anywhere new. The advantages and complications tables are great for flavouring successes and setbacks, but sometimes a prompt just isn't appropriate to the situation. I just keep rolling that a shooting star falls nearby. It's getting dangerous at this point. Sometimes a game has a strong theme and makes a lot of assumptions about the kind of story you'll be telling. Others are more open-ended and have a, well, what kind of story do you want to tell attitude. It might not be immediately clear where Midnight Muscadines sits on that spectrum. On the one hand, a lot of the tools of the game point to the core loop being explore the Wildernite, collect Midnight Muscadines, craft magical jam. but others imply a much more open-ended, do-what-you-want approach. So for example, there's a hex crawl map where you explore and build your version of the Wildernite. There are rules for the risk rating of an area and how likely you are to encounter the Shadows of Tomb. There are Wildernite locations with NPCs and rumours and quests. There are rules for gathering ingredients, how to craft them into jams and customise your spells, and what happens if your jam goes off. But then there are all these factions, mysteries and stories going on in Nim that are only tangentially related to the Midnight Muscadines. Each location has NPCs and events, some of which tie together into larger stories. They have cosy and whimsical locations to chill out at, like restaurants and tea houses, but they also might be at the centre of some clandestine political machinations. There's quite a lot to discover, and I've barely scratched the surface in my games. And at no point in my games have I ever encountered a Midnight Muscadine. In my AP series, for example, I'm doing things like exploring abandoned spirit libraries, attending magic school, getting into scrapes with rival students, and investigating grand epic plots of political conspiracies, chained gods, and beings from another realm. I think that's a big part of the beauty of this game. When you want structure, you have it. You can always go on a grape collecting hex crawl mission, or pick one of the adventures to follow. Or you can focus on any aspect of the world that takes your fancy, finding and following these little threads to who knows where. What does it mean for a game to be both cosy and dark? Well, here's a cosy game, Anna Blackwell's Apothecaria. What if you added a healthy dose of Dark Souls to it? What would it be like? Well, you'd be gathering ingredients in a strange and twisted landscape, going to parties in a dying world. So that works as an elevator pitch, I suppose, but I think it's more than just slapping two different tones together. I've seen a few complaints recently about games that market themselves as Studio Ghibli-like, and how what they tend to mean really is more of a twee and cosy aesthetic rather than in a literary thematic sense. So what are the themes they're missing? It's usually darker stuff. Hayao Miyazaki often wrote about the corruption and domination of nature for the sake of greed, power, or war, and about intimate communities struggling with the suffering and darkness that came from that destruction. In Midnight Muscadines, the people of Song killed Tomb, the god of night, in a misguided attempt to dominate nature, and they suffered for it. It corrupted their world, it broke them as people, and led to conflict, war, and a greater struggle to survive in their fragmented communities. Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind by Miyazaki explores those same themes. It massively influenced JRPGs like Final Fantasy VII that also had those themes, and that in turn influenced Fabula Ultima, which again explores those themes. A game I've held up as the epitome of bright fantasy. For me, there's a big crossover between what I call bright fantasy and what Midnight Muscadines calls cozy dark, and how this game and its setting goes about achieving that tone feels almost tailor-made for me personally. I want my games to have these light moments that focus on community, learning about the little traditions that brighten their days and bring them together. And I like to contrast that with seriously epic stuff about the corruption of nature, vengeful gods, and the end of the world. That is why I love this game. I try to keep these videos to 20 minutes or so I won't keep you, but please don't click away just yet. There's two quick things I need to do. First, show my pile of upcoming reviews, and second, thank the wonderful people on Ko-fi who supported the channel this month. They help me showcase all these little indie games that deserve so much more attention. If you've enjoyed my videos or found a new game here and feel eager and able to support the channel, then please head over to ko-fi.com/cozyrpgreviews. And until next time, happy adventures! So now you have 6 abilities. You need to assign scores to your 4 attributes. We're using a step die system. Jesus fucking